There's someone in your life, maybe a coworker, a friend, maybe even a family member, who has been through things that would genuinely break most people. Job loss, heartbreak, grief, failure, real, heavy, life-altering difficulty. And yet they're okay. Not fake okay. Not, I'm fine, while secretly falling apart okay. Actually, genuinely, okay. And if you've ever looked at that person and quietly wondered, what do they have that I don't? That question is exactly what today's video is going to answer. Because it's not luck, it's not genetics, and it's definitely not that their life has been easier than yours. It's psychology, and once you understand it, everything changes. What you're about to hear isn't a list of motivational advice. No, wake up at 5 a.m. No, just think positive. What this is a deep psychological look at the specific internal patterns that make certain people almost impossible to break. 8 signs, each one backed by real behavioral science. Each one something you can actually recognize, understand, and build inside yourself. Stay until the end, because the last sign completely reframes what resilience even means. Sign 1. They don't fight their own mind. Most people, when a dark or anxious thought appears, immediately go to war with it. Why am I thinking this? Stop thinking this. What's wrong with me? And the harder they fight, the louder it gets. Mentally resilient people have learned something counterintuitive. The thought isn't the problem. The relationship with the thought is. Psychologists call this cognitive defusion, the ability to observe a thought without becoming it. Instead of I am anxious, it becomes I notice I'm feeling anxious right now. That one internal shift from being inside the storm to watching it changes everything about how they function under pressure. Sign 2. They grieve without getting lost. Here's something most people quietly misunderstand about resilience. It doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you feel it completely, and you don't let it become your permanent address. Mentally resilient people cry. They grieve. They have hard nights and slow mornings. But they don't confuse experiencing something with becoming it. Behavioral researchers describe this as adaptive grieving, a process where the emotional experience is fully honored, then gradually integrated rather than suppressed or extended indefinitely. The difference between someone who heals and someone who stays stuck is almost never how much they felt. It's what they did with the feeling after. Sign 3. They've made peace with being misunderstood. Think about how much energy most people spend managing other people's perception of them, adjusting their opinions in conversation, softening their real thoughts, saying yes when they mean no, just to keep the room comfortable. Mentally resilient people still care about relationships, but they've untangled self-worth from social approval in a way that most people never quite manage. Psychologists link this to a concept called identity clarity, a stable, well-defined internal sense of who you are that doesn't shift dramatically based on who's in the room. When your identity isn't up for negotiation, disapproval stops feeling like a threat. It becomes information, sometimes useful, sometimes not, but never devastating. Sign 4. They make decisions from values, not from fear. Most decisions people make, if you trace them back honestly, are driven by one of 2 questions. What do I actually want? Or, what am I trying to avoid? Fear-based decision-making keeps people safe in the short term, but it also keeps them small. Mentally resilient people aren't reckless. They feel the fear, and then they ask a different question. Does this align with what actually matters to me? Research in motivational psychology calls this the difference between avoidance motivation and approach motivation. People who operate from approach, moving toward values rather than away from fear, consistently show greater life satisfaction, more creative problem solving, and stronger long-term resilience. It's not that they're fearless. They've just stopped letting fear cast the deciding vote. Sign 5. They hold failure as data, not identity. In the United States alone, some of the most successful companies in history were built by people who had failed publicly, sometimes catastrophically, before. That's not an accident. Mentally resilient people process failure differently at a neurological level. When something goes wrong, the untrained brain defaults to a shame spiral, connecting the event to personal worth. I failed, therefore I am a failure. Resilient people interrupt that connection. They ask what happened. Why did it happen? What does that tell me? Psychologists call this an incremental mindset, the belief that ability and judgment are buildable, not fixed. Every failure becomes a data point in an ongoing experiment rather than a verdict on who you are. That internal reframe isn't just emotionally healthier. Research consistently shows it produces better performance outcomes over time. Sign 6. They know the difference between rest and escape. This one is subtle, but it matters enormously. When life gets heavy, most people reach for escape. Scrolling, binging, numbing out, anything to avoid sitting with what they're actually feeling. Mentally resilient people rest. And there's a real psychological difference. Rest restores capacity. Escape borrows from it. Rest is a walk with no destination. Escape is 3 hours of scrolling that leaves you feeling worse than when you started. Researchers who study cognitive restoration, particularly the work done around attention fatigue, have found that genuine rest requires stepping away from demand, not just switching which screen you're looking at. Resilient people protect genuine rest almost like a resource, because they've learned firsthand what happens when that resource runs out. Sign 7. They stay curious when others shut down. Crisis does something interesting to the human brain. For most people, a major setback triggers what psychologists call cognitive narrowing. The mind's focus becomes tight, rigid, and threat-focused. Creativity drops. Options feel limited. The world seems smaller. Mentally resilient people experience the same stress response. But somewhere in their processing, a different question emerges. Not just how do I get through this, but what is this actually showing me? That shift from threat to inquiry doesn't eliminate the pain, but it keeps the mind open at exactly the moment most people's close. And open minds find exits that closed ones never see. Sign 8. They've stopped waiting for life to feel easier before they begin. This is the one. There's a quiet belief that lives in the back of most people's minds that once things settle down, once the anxiety fades, once circumstances improve, then they'll take the step. Then they'll start. Mentally resilient people don't live in that once. They've accepted something uncomfortable and freeing at the same time. Life doesn't pause to become ideal before demanding that you show up in it. This isn't pessimism. It's a deeply earned form of clarity. Psychologists describe this as unconditional commitment, the internal shift from "I'll engage fully when conditions are right" to "I engage fully because this is the only life I actually have." And when that belief genuinely settles in, resilience stops being something you have to work at. It becomes who you are. Mental resilience isn't a personality type you're born into. It's a collection of internal patterns, cognitive, emotional, behavioral, that anyone can study, understand, and slowly build into their daily life. The fact that you watched this far isn't coincidental. Curiosity about how the mind works is itself one of the earliest signs that this kind of growth has already started in you. If this video made you think, drop a comment below. Tell me which sign hit closest to home. I read every single one. If you want more psychology content like this, subscribe, because we go deep here every single week. And if you're ready for the next step, watch this video next. It goes into the specific daily habits that mentally resilient people build almost without thinking. See you there.